Good evening, everybody, and welcome. My name is Sabir, pronouns he, him, and I run events here at the Strand. Before we launch into a discussion of Amanda Lovelace's new poetry collection, Unlock Your Storybook Heart, I'd like to share a little bit of history about the Strand. The Strand was founded in 1927 by Benjamin Bass over on 4th Avenue's Book Row. Stretching from Union Square to Astor Place, Book Row gradually dwindled from 48 bookstores until, after over 95 years, the Strand is the sole survivor, now run by third generation owner Nancy Bass Whiten. We want to thank all of you for your support. Without our loyal community of book lovers, booksellers, and the time of authors like Amanda and Summer, we wouldn't be here today, and we truly appreciate all of you. And so tonight we are thrilled to have with us Amanda Lovelace for a discussion of her new poetry collection, Unlock Your Storybook Heart. Amanda Lovelace, pronouns she, they, is the author of several best-selling poetry titles, including her celebrated Women Are Some Kind of Magic series, as well as her You Are Your Own Fairy Tale trilogy. They're also the co-creator of the Believe in Your Own Magic Oracle deck. When she isn't reading, writing, or drinking a much needed cup of coffee, you can find her casting spells from her home in a very small town on the Jersey Shore, where she resides with her poet spouse and their 3 cats. Joining Amanda in conversation tonight is Summer Webb. An avid reader and adventurer, Summer Webb, pronouns she, her, is a literature-focused content creator based in the Great Smoky Mountains of Tennessee. When she isn't reading, you can typically find her attempting to bake too many desserts in the kitchen or spending hours scrolling through TripAdvisor, planning her next escape. And so, without further ado, please join me in welcoming Amanda and Summer to the stage.
Hi, everyone.
Hello. I am so excited to be here with you to celebrate the release of your 9th collection. Do you have any poems that you can read to us to get started?
I happen to have 2 poems to read. All right.
What a coincidence.
We didn't plan it at all. All right. Let me tell you a bittersweet story. There is a girl who has always been told that she's one of the quote unquote gifted ones, the kind who always sits at the front of the class and gets every question right. We just know you're going to take the world by storm, they all tell her, proud as can be. What if I don't want to? She wishes she could say. Instead, she stays quiet and smiles like a good girl. Let me tell you an even more bittersweet story. There is a girl who can accomplish just about anything she puts her mind to, even the things that most people think a girl can't possibly do, even the things that make her stress cry, tears clouding her glasses, but she can't let herself down. She can't let them down. She can't let herself down. She can't let them down.
I'm so happy that you chose those two. I think they really encompass what this book is about. So it's a really good introduction to the questions that we have for today.
Those were actually the last 2 poems I wrote for the book. I had no idea what I was going to do for those. I think I usually write them first because I'm like trying to decide what kind of character this is and what their story is going to be like. But I had such a tough time with these ones. So thanks.
Yay. But like we mentioned, this is your 9th collection. And I'm so excited that this one especially released in the middle of Women's History Month. And because so many of your poems are centered around feminism and empowering women, I wanted to ask if you could write a collection about one historically significant woman, who would you choose?
I actually have 2 because I want to make this a little bit different than the other event that we did.
Okay, I was going to tell you not to say the one that I know you're going to say.
I'm going to say her anyway, and then I'll tell you my other one. So I'm sure no one will be surprised because I actually I've written poems that include her quite a few times. I think it was in Princess, and I want to say the other one was in Mermaids, but it is the poet Emily Dickinson. Um, and I was thinking about like if I did write a book about her, especially like what I do with like taking characters and like modernizing them and like giving them like our like today's problems and things like that, it wouldn't be too different than Unlock Your Storybook Heart because we have all the nature imagery, like all like the cottagecore imagery. I even like talk about a woodland cottage at one point in this book. Um, we have religion. I talk about it a little bit differently than she would because I'm pagan. We talk about death, and there's also, of course, at the center of this book is a queer relationship between two girls. And lots of people think that Emily Dickinson was queer, which I do too. I think the Apple TV show actually explores that. I haven't seen it, and I know I'm super late to that, but like I've never used Apple TV before, so it's still to be watched in the future. Um, but yeah, those are my thoughts. But the other person that I might like to write a collection about, like theoretically, would be Princess Diana.
You knew.
Theoretically.
You knew how I would react.
I've always been fascinated by her story and her as a person because like, I mean, who isn't? She's Princess Diana. Um, but especially after seeing the movie Spencer with Kristen Stewart, I just
I
like never
started it,
stopped
but
thinking about her.
I couldn't finish that movie because I was too excited. I was like, this is gonna stress me out. I need to save it for another day.
It's a beautiful movie. Ugh.
So this is gonna happen. I'm gonna like manifest it and speak it into an existence for you because that would okay. You took me a little bit off track here because now I don't even know what to think about aside from that. But yes, please do that.
I'll get right on it.
Okay, yeah. That can be the 10th collection that you write.
Exactly.
But anyway, going back to the Emily Dickinson cottagecore vibes. This collection I definitely felt was very reminiscent of the latest Taylor Swift era. And knowing that you're a big fan of her music, I wondered if there's certain artists, not just her, or even songs in specific that you listen to while writing.
Well, you were definitely spot on with Taylor Swift, but you know me, so obviously. Right before I started writing this book, I think Evermore came out. So songs like Ivy, Willow, even the title song Evermore, those definitely inspired this book. Very atmospheric, like slow piano melodies, like very, very atmospheric and very beautiful. Florence and the Machine always inspires me, but I feel like for this one especially, I was going for like a almost like a green witch vibe. And Florence and the Machine has like the whole witchy but still relatable vibe that I like to go for. So definitely Florence and the Machine. And then a band called Celtic Woman, which I don't know many people that listen to them personally, but they're one of my favorite bands. They're very like whimsical and magical. And I was definitely obsessed with them over this last like year or two. So they definitely have some influence in there as well. But I don't actually like to listen to music where there's people singing like when I'm writing because I can't hear myself and I can't think. And I want to like I need to separate other people's voices from my own. So I usually just listen to like ambiance music. I'll put in like magical forest sounds, magical garden sounds, like things like that, and just like let that play the entire time. Sometimes I'll even do look up like cafe sounds or like cafe in a bookstore sounds because I haven't sat in a bookstore or in a cafe bookstore or in a bookstore cafe since at least 2020 and I miss it. There's just something about it.
I agree. Oh, I can't wait to do that. But going back to the magical rainforest or magical sounds, this book really does, aside from like the cottagecore vibes, which the artwork of that is just phenomenal. I can't even get over it. As always, they're always great. But this book particularly did feel more atmospheric than any of your other books that came before. Can you tell us a little bit about how you built such a warm and comforting feeling that carried throughout the entire collection and how it was different from the other books in the trilogy?
Yeah, I definitely think I went a lot harder on this book than the other books in the series. You know, Break Your Glass Slippers, like it had a lot of short poems and I didn't exactly like make it super atmospheric. It was more like generally whimsical and magical, which was on purpose. I didn't know what I was going to make the series into. So that was sort of like my starting point that I was going to build off of. Um, so like vaguely magical, especially to go along with the fairy godmother being the wisdom giver. So that was definitely on purpose. Then I got to Shine Your Icy Crown, and it was a little bit more atmospheric. The first thing I think about when I think about that book is like the 2-page spread that shows the forest, and there's rose quartz growing out of the ground and hanging from trees as if they're leaves, like pendulums. And a little bit more of like a wintry vibe. I talk about like hot chocolate and like snow angels, but still, once I got to Unlock Your Story Book Heart, I was like, I don't know what took over. One of the first poems that I wrote was one about a gravestone being overtaken by mushrooms and moss. And I was like, oh no, when I wrote that, because I was like, this has to be like the entire theme for the book. Like it has to be like this. And I knew it would be a little bit different than the other two, but I was like, I'm just gonna go for it, see what happens. And it just ended up just being like that the entire time. And I think part of the reason was I wrote a standalone poetry collection between Icy Crown and this called Flower Crowns of Fearsome Things. It's not in this series, but I did sort of write it in a whirlwind month when between those two books. And I was writing about a modern day goddess, Persephone, who is the goddess of spring and the queen of the underworld. And the goddess of spring was my favorite part to write because it was so flowery. I was like researching flowers and I was just coming up with like imagery that could be very spring. And I think it definitely bled over into this book a little, but like, I'm not mad about it.
No, I'm not mad about it at all. I was thinking though that the first two books to me felt more like almost like a mental conversation with yourself, and this one does too, but it's also more like a conversation with your environment, with the people around you, and you know, expectations and things like that. So definitely loved this one. I think it, like I always tell you that your collections come to me right when I need them, but I really, every single time, that's true, it rings true every time. Speaking of favorites, another thing that I really loved about this collection is that you included a few poems about cats. And for me, that really hit home because I recently adopted a dog, which is like my heart and soul. And she was a huge part of healing after my grandmother, who was very important to me, passed away. And being that I'm such a huge fan of animals and specifically your kitties, I shamelessly would like to know which of your books suits the personalities of each of your cats from this trilogy.
Yeah, before I get into that, I do want to say that even though these books are fiction, like largely fiction anyway, like they're taking some parts from my life, my feelings, experiences, but I fictionalize them. Like that poem about the cat that I talked about at being her soft companion, and it was like her best friend when no one else was there for her. That was definitely based on my own childhood cat. Her name was Sissy. I don't know if I've ever like posted pictures of her recently. She was like a domestic long hair black cat. And yeah, that was definitely based on her. So I did actually, I think, mention her a little bit in Princess, but I wanted to bring her up again with the topics that I was talking about. But with that, the cats that I would associate with each book, we have Break Your Glass Slippers, and I chose Rosie for that, which she is one of my ragdoll cats. She's the one that is not solid white for anyone who like watches my Instagram stories. I picked that because the Cinderella character was sort of like going through a lot of insecurities and things like that. And Rosie, even though she's loving and she's a darling, she is very jealous and insecure when it comes to like other cats. So I felt like that was just perfect for her. Plus, Break Your Glass Slippers has like the blue theme, and her eyes are like stormy blue, and I feel like it just goes. Now, for Icy Crown, you suggested Maki, which I totally agree. My cat Macchiato, she's the solid white ragdoll. I mean, like that's it's just I think it's the most perfect fit out of all of these. Like she's independent, she's queenly and regal, and it just like fits. And she has these ice blue eyes, I call them. And even though Icy Crown is not like a blue in theme, that's glass slippers. I just like I couldn't get out of my mind like her ice blue eyes when you were talking about this. And that leaves with Unlock Your Storybook Heart, my cat Moonstone, the character in this, I guess like the Belle character, because it's Beauty and the Beast, she's a little anxious, she's stressed out all the time. Also Moon's eyes are very green and it like almost perfectly matches the green that we used as the theme. So I feel like that was just perfect.
I feel like kindred spirit with Moon for some reason. For some reason. I mean, all of them, but have I met Moon? I'm not sure if I have yet or not.
I don't think you have. You only met Maki and Rosie.
Okay, that's what I thought. Soon. Soon Moon. But anyway, so continuing on, as a reader, personally, I love that this collection centers on learning self-love and empowerment from books, because I also did that growing up, and it made me curious to know if you drew any advice from childhood books growing up, and which books you would say had the largest impact on your life, whether it's as a child or a young adult.
In terms of like the biggest impact, I feel like that's so hard to say because like I was such a big reader, and like I wrote about in Princess like having no friends, and how when I had no friends I had books. That's literally what it was. Like I was just always reading or always engaging in like some kind of fictional tale, whether it was like TV or movies. So there were just so many to pick from. I will say when I was a teenager, one of the book series that really helped me was the Shadowhunter series. And I know like that seems very modern right now because there was the TV show and everything, and everyone's like currently reading Shadowhunters. But those books actually started when I was in high school. I had to have been like 14 or 15 when the first one came out. And I think I might have picked it up because I had like a Stephanie Meyer blurb on it. And I was like, oh, I'll have to read this.
You said add that to the list.
And the main character, Clary, while she like I didn't take any like words of advice, I guess you would say, I found a lot of guidance in just like who she was as a character. Because she was at that time very unconventional for a main character. She was very unlikable, which I liked. One thing that was important to me was that she was chubby and it was talked about, and it wasn't like this thing of shame. She just was. And that was like important to me as someone who also was. She did a lot of messy, problematic, like just things that like teenage girls do. And I felt like I just wasn't seeing that in other books. So that really resonated with me. And it basically made me comforted in the fact that I was also like messy and made mistakes. So
Right.
that book definitely impacted me a lot. And that character, I mean, still to this day, impacts me a lot.
I would agree with that. It's one of the reasons why I started reading books and writing about them online. I would say for me, I think Tuck Everlasting and Matilda, like as a very young kid reading those.
I love Tuck Everlasting. Actually, there's a Tuck Everlasting poem in, what is it? To Make Monsters Out of Girls, I think it's in.
I think that is the one. As you know, that was my favorite until recently.
I actually mentioned it in that book specifically because To Make Monsters Out of Girls is sort of like an answer to Twilight, which I don't think a lot of people know it is. And there was this theory back in the fandom days that the last book in the series, or maybe just the series overall, was going to be like a Tuck Everlasting retelling, but it ended up very much not being that way, and everyone was very upset. So I had to like sneak that one in there.
Yeah, I love that one. Now, going back to books that we loved when we were younger, as you mentioned earlier, the couple in this book is gay. But the way that it's written is so natural and beautiful. It felt incredibly real. You mentioned that Clary in Mortal Instruments was chubby, but it was just something that it wasn't a focus. And that's how I felt about the relationship in this book. And it was so refreshing. And it made me think that, do you feel that there is sort of a lack of healthy and happy relationship representation in media that's geared towards young people?
I feel like it's definitely getting better. Like there's way more books for teens about being queer and like books with queer couples than I grew up with. We talked about this in the last one, but like when I used to want to read queer books as a teen, I used to have to go to the adult section, and those books weren't necessarily geared towards me. I wasn't necessarily interested in them, and a lot of them had tragic endings, like a lot of them. I think there's definitely more now, but I definitely went into writing this book with the intention of just making it normal, because like the character is pansexual, I'm also pansexual. I never saw that growing up in any books. And I just wanted to make it normal. It was sort of like a letter to myself or a book to myself. I actually write about how I wish I had those books growing up where like girls just liked people despite gender, like being pansexual. And so it was sort of like breaking the fourth wall a bit because that's what I was kind of doing with the book. So that was definitely on purpose. But yeah, I definitely think there's more books coming out, especially nowadays. But I wish it was like that when I was younger. So this book is definitely a book to myself in a lot of ways.
I agree that it's becoming more common, but until recently, the only time that you would see it is if it had been fetishized.
Yeah.
But that's what I liked so much about this book is that like it just was, which not even in media really, like TV, movies, anything does that happen. It's rarely just a simple fact. It
Yeah.
always is some sort of trauma or discussion, a big coming out or something, which that's all fine. I'm sure every experience is different, but I just really loved seeing how simple it could be.
Yeah, I definitely think there's a time and a place for all stories. And I think it's especially important for queer people to be able to write about queer pain. But
Mhm.
this was just like my one little book that I wanted to do that was like, here it is, and here she is. She's pansexual, and that's it. Like, this is her happy
Yeah.
ending. She ends up as queen and queen with the love of her life. Like, I just wanted it to be that.
And the imagery of when she first sees her in the book was like, I think they were in a bookstore. Is that correct
I think
in
it's the
this one?
library.
Yeah, a library. Yeah. I don't know. It was
Yeah, I
just so
wanted to
visual to
connect
me.
it back to Beauty and the Beast that way.
Yeah, it was, but that's what I mentioned when it was so atmospheric. Like everything, just like I can picture it in my head as I was reading it. Like even now, I'm thinking about it, and it's like a movie. Uh,
Hey, maybe one
um,
day.
oh my gosh, yes, please. But we'll wait for the Princess Di collection first
Exactly.
before we make any big decisions on anything else. But anyway, a few of the poems in this collection near the end discuss doing things that scare us despite doubting ourselves, and one of them leaves space for the reader to answer what one thing they would do if only they had the confidence or the bravery to do so. And I kind of want to turn that back to you and have you answer it as well. What is one bucket list item or a full bucket list that you'd like to complete in the future?
So I have two things, although they sort of can be the same thing, but I'll just say them both. One would be maybe starting like a witchcraft store, whether that's online or in person. I think that would be really cool. But also maybe even starting like an online magical witchy class course sort of thing. I every year join this thing called Witch Camp. Maya Toll runs it. I don't think she's doing it next year or this year, but I love this idea of like everyone coming together, learning about what it means to be a witch, and like learning from someone who's more experienced and like doing lessons. It's almost sort of like a Hogwarts, but like for adults and online.
Right.
I think that could be pretty cool. Of course, mine would be like unique to me, but I just love what she does with that.
I think it would be fun if it was sort of like your books where it's modernized and like how it relates to things that happen now. Because I
Yeah.
feel like a lot of times when people think of witch camp, or I mean, I wanted to join the last one so much, but I think in general it's a little intimidating for people. So if you could like dumb it down, that's what I need. But yeah, I think that would be great. I think that you would be good at it. Do you think that you would do it as like an interactive class or more of like just videos that you could put out and people could watch and learn?
See how Maya told us it is like we have lessons every day, but I think it was like once a week she would do like a Zoom like this. And I really liked that. I've done courses where it's like they're just recorded videos and you watch them all and you do the course, and that's fine. Like I like to learn at my own speed, but there was something about like the interactiveness and being able to speak directly to the person teaching that I really liked. So I don't know.
Yeah, that's what I feel what I would learn best at. One of these days I will actually join the witch camp because it sounds so fun. I was gonna do it last time, but I was actually out of town. I went to Florida
Aw.
with to visit family. So, but yeah, that's the only reason. That's the only thing that stopped me. um, so again, on page 27, there's a poem in this collection that discusses feeling silly or embarrassed of traditionally girly hobbies or interests, but eventually taking those things back instead of feeling shame from enjoying them, we actually start to praise it. And as a child of the Y2K era, I was a huge boy band fan. I mean, weren't we all? Um, but during my teenage years, I felt really embarrassed of my previous obsession, and I wouldn't tell anyone about the things that I spent so many years loving. And this is like as deep as I went to a Hanson concert and that cried my eyes out for my 12th birthday. And my mom thought that I was like having a horrible time and was offering to let me leave. And I was like, no, I'm just so happy. But then whenever I hit like middle and high school, I was like, don't you dare tell anyone that I did that, you know? So I was curious to know that if as an adult, you have any vices that were once considered vapid that you've re-embraced.
So definitely the color pink. And that was like a running theme with Shine Your Icy Crown, because I made that the theme color. And I had talked about back then how I wish I had done a poem that was like reclaiming the color pink, because that totally was a thing for me. Like when I was like 11, I decided I would only be dressing in black, and I like ditched everything that I used to like, because like I was like, oh well, that's too girly, no one will take me seriously, or like doesn't match my mood. When like pink is great, like it's great. Like along with reclaiming pink, I reclaim things like fairies and unicorns, rainbows. Like basically, it's like what I ditched because of like internalized misogyny was also in part like shunning my inner child. And I feel like I am right now just like re-meeting my inner child and like sort of curing my internalized misogyny by like embracing all of these things all at the same time.
I feel that. It took me a long time and to like feel okay with telling people this. And I know it sounds so silly. I'm sure you can relate though with even the color pink. Is whenever you love something so deeply for so long, like I was a fangirl. And then it, you know, someone, even it could just be one person that tells you that it's stupid. You carry that with you forever,
Yeah,
for years.
for sure. Yeah.
And so to be able to release that and to feel okay sharing what you really love is something special.
Yeah, when
so
I was, oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
When I was in elementary school, like I was bullied pretty badly, and I went to a very small school, so like everyone knew everyone. So it was pretty bad because like you knew all of your peers, and it was like I felt like a personal affront. And like for some reason, I was known as the girl who loved Harry Potter, and I always wore Harry Potter shirts. There was this one Christmas where my mom got me a bunch of Harry Potter shirts and stuff, and I would wear them like every day because I was so excited. I was a fangirl, like you were a fangirl. And I just got made fun of so much. Like it was so bad, and I wanted to start not wearing those shirts. Now I would not wear those shirts for different reasons. But
exactly. That's what I was gonna say.
Because
Maybe
of She Who Must Not Be Named. But like it's just it took me back to that. And it's terrible. Like when you get made up for something that you like, you feel like you can't be yourself.
Right. And now shamelessly we wear pink and listen to Hanson and the Jonas Brothers, but we do not wear Harry Potter shirts in this house. So
yes, that's the only difference.
Anyway, so we are getting closer to the end now, so I would like to ask you just a few wrap-up questions. What would you like for readers to take away from this collection?
So my intent with this collection was, even I need this message sometimes, it's to sort of forget all the plans that you had for you or that other people had for you, and don't be afraid to walk a new path, even if you've never seen anyone do it before. Like you don't have to walk a path that other people have walked. You can forge your own, you can walk your own, and you should always be chasing your happiness and not someone else's.
Even if that includes boy bands.
Exactly.
And then the next question I have for you is, can you give us a little sneak peek of what you're working on next, or if there is anything lined up, and if there's not, you should get to work on Princess Diana?
It's a complicated question because like I'm at this weird point in my career where like I've wrapped up this series and now I'm like, okay, what's next? It's not a secret, but I did, and I have been working on a tarot deck. It's called Cozy Witch Tarot. It's on Amazon. It's not a secret. Like you can go look it up. People have, and they've been messaging me about it. Just don't pay attention to the release date because I basically got official confirmation it's not coming out that day.
Oh gosh.
But that's the thing, the art is just being drawn. And I'm also working on a companion, like very slowly to that deck. I can't say what it is yet because I still need to announce the deck, but it's a companion to that. And I'm also working on something else that's like not poetry and it's not like oracle, it's not tarot. And then I have other things that like I'm looking to see if I can also do those. So like I have a lot of things on my plate. Weirdly enough, none of them are really like one of them is kind of poetry related, but it's not in a way that I've done it before. So we'll see what's next because it's like at this point I don't know what is even gonna come next.
I feel like for the first time since you started releasing poetry collections, that you've always had sort of like a clear cut like line of things that
Mhm.
need to be completed and released. And this is the first time that you're like free to do other things.
Yeah.
So
It's like
does that like
chaos right now.
does that so it's chaotic? Is I was gonna ask you if that's like sort of like relieving or if it's more stressful.
I think it's both. Like it's stressful, but not necessarily in a bad way because it's like I know I can do anything and we just have to like fine tune it and decide like what's coming out when. Um and like I don't think I would ever like walk away from poetry, but it is sort of nice to have a little bit of a break and sort of do something new, like a tarot deck, just to sort of like get re-inspired and things like that. So I definitely think I'll have another one in the future. It's just like right now I have to deal with like this magical hat where I'm just like pulling a million things out.
Exactly. Now I know that you did the Oracle deck, which is beautiful as well. But that was only how many cards? 13 or something?
45.
The Oracle deck was 45.
Yes. Yeah, it's 15
Wow.
cards per book in that series.
Okay, yeah, I actually think I knew that. I have it like literally on my bookshelf right over there that I can see it. But I was gonna ask you, how many more cards is it for a full tarot deck?
So a full tarot deck is 78 cards. So it's like almost double. I can't do math, but it like the Oracle deck was 45 and then a tarot deck 78. Now I did the traditional 78. Some people do even more cards, and I don't know how they do it. They like make up their own cards to like put their own touch on the deck. That was not me.
You said no thanks. I was gonna ask you if that was like more challenging than the Oracle deck. Do you feel like you have more room to play with that many cards?
I think the tarot deck was the hardest thing I've ever done. Like I can't wait to talk about it and rant about it when like it finally comes out and maybe we do like another event like this. When I tell you I literally at one point in the project was sitting down to write the guidebook and every day from that point until the end until I was done I had an anxiety attack every single day. Even though I loved the project, it was just so much. Like because you have to work within the confines of the traditional meanings and then you also have to put your own spin on it and you only have so much space to be able to say your meaning while also touching upon what's in the card. It was just a whole thing and I like psyched myself out way too much and even though now like I'm loving it and I love all the art and I can't wait for everyone to see it, it was like the hardest thing I've ever done.
I'm very excited to see it, especially with the artwork. It's anything like the Oracle deck. So that was a little bit of a stressful question, I can tell. So I think that we should close out our questions before we go to the audience Q&A with you reading your favorite poem from this collection.
After
Just to
all
clear
many
the slate.
Now I mentioned the poem for one of the questions where there's a gravestone where there's mushrooms and moss.
Mhm.
And this was one of the first poems that I wrote. I don't know if you can see that, but
Yeah, it's
there's the
so
gravestone.
cute.
So above it is one of the first poems I wrote for the collection and probably one of my favorites. Her books say, "Someday science shall finally prove what we already know. No one ever truly departs from this earth, not when they take their last breath, not when they become cold to the touch, not when they're lowered into the soil, not even when their gravestone is overtaken by mushrooms and moss. Know that when you speak aloud to them, they listen to every word. You need only trust what you hear back from the silence."
I love it too. You're right. That is my favorite one now. It actually reminded me of like a tattoo. I was like, someone should have this on them, like a moss covered gravestone with like mushrooms.
I should get it.
You should get it. That should be to celebrate.
To celebrate, let's get a gravestone.
Exactly. So we can pivot to the audience Q&A now. I am just going to pull up a few of them here first. Let's see. Okay. Let's see. Anonymous asked, how did we first meet and become friends?
Oh, me and you?
Yeah.
I was
Yeah.
like, me and who?
It's actually a little bit embarrassing. We met on Tumblr.
That is not embarrassing at all. And more specifically, it's Bookler, book
Bookler.
Tumblr. We were both book bloggers, and we met because we were just all within the same community.
And we were both a little sassy.
Oh yeah, you didn't like me at first.
Yeah, I didn't like you at first because you were a little sassy, but
I
think it
was a
'cause
lot sassy.
I think I was also sassy too, and that's probably been like 10 years ago almost.
At least, yeah. It's 2022 now, so it was like maybe 2013.
Wow,
It's been a long time.
that is nuts to think about. That it's been that long that I've known you, and it's sort of just been like a thing. Even when we left Tumblr, we just sort of like remained friends, and you're probably one of my best friends now, ever.
Same.
Let's see, and then the next question is, Parker wants to know what's our favorite boy band. This is a tough question.
They're gonna hate me, but like I totally was like not into boy bands.
Not at all.
I like there are songs here and there that I love. I guess
Backstreet's Back, all right.
I guess if I had to pick, maybe NSYNC.
No, everybody knows that like between Backstreet Boys and NSYNC that it's clearly Backstreet Boys. Clearly.
They have good songs. It's just like I never listened to either of them enough to be like they're my favorite.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, recently I probably don't listen to them as much either, but like anytime I just need like a get up and go, like road trip music or anything, it's got to be boy bands like One Direction. I am a One Direction stan. Like, yes, I met them their first trip to America. Like,
of course you did.
I had to join the Big Time Rush fan club so that I could get access to buy early tickets because One Direction was opening for Big Time Rush.
There is that one One Direction song I like, Story of My Life.
Yes.
That's what it's called. It's beautiful. I used to like it was on my playlist. That's how much I liked it.
Yeah, I like all of them. But yeah, I like them all. Let's see here. This is for Amanda and Summer. What's a book you read recently and love?
Oh, I need to get my reading app out.
As
soon as I read a book, I totally forget it. Okay.
Oh, same, me too. I'll go ahead and answer while you're looking. I read Book Lovers by Emily Henry, which I don't think it's out yet. It comes out soon, but it was phenomenal. I loved it. So that's mine.
I actually just a few days ago I read This Woven Kingdom by Tahara Mafi. It was incredible. When I first started it, I didn't know how I was going to feel about it because it was very different from Shatter Me. You've read Shatter Me, right, Summer?
Oh yeah, for sure.
It was very different. Like in this book is thick and it's just like the descriptions are very long, where Shatter Me is very like simple and to the point. It almost reminded me of like modern poetry to an extent. I didn't know what to expect. And then like as it was going, oh my God, it got so amazing. Like if I had read that book years ago and you told me it was her book, I wouldn't have believed you. It was just like, obviously I love Shatter Me, but it's like a whole different kind of book. And it was just excellent. And I'm really excited for any kind of sequels that come out.
I always feel like she's a little like magical, mystical anyway with her writing. So
yeah, this one,
me like it.
This one was actually, I think it was a Cinderella retelling, which I didn't know going in. I all of the time will pick up books blind and not even know, especially for authors that I like her. But it was really, really well done. I believe it's Persian mythology and like mixed with Cinderella. It was very good.
I'm gonna have to get that one. It sounds really good.
It really
Okay,
surprised me.
so the next question that we have is, what's the most difficult part of your writing process?
All of it. I think honestly, the hardest part is just beginning, because at that stage, it's like either things are going to stay or go. And a lot of the times, a lot of what I write just goes. And like, I just have to write my way into finding out what the book is going to be like. So it's a lot of like awkward, like a baby fawn, like trying to rise up on its legs. So I think beginning is definitely the hardest part for me.
Okay, so the next question that we have is, what is your favorite book in the collection? Mine is the Unlock Your Storybook Heart.
Mine used to be Glass Slippers, but now it's Unlock Your Storybook Heart. And I could not say the same. I think I might have said Mermaids was my favorite when the series ended. But honestly, looking back, it was such a hard book for me to write that like it just that the ending of that series was less sweet than bitter, because like I had so much pressure when I was writing Mermaids that like I didn't even know going in what I would be writing about. I just had this title of a book, and I like wrote a little, maybe like half the book, and I like threw it away because I had no idea what I was doing. And then I had to like rethink what I was gonna even write and do it in like a timely manner, because publishing is like due dates and deadlines. And I just like, looking back, don't think I would do it differently just because it was the book I needed to write. But I feel like I could do such a better job. Honestly, I feel like I could do such a better job if I got to rewrite any of my books.
No, I don't think so. I think, like I told you, they all come at just the right time. So
That's true.
the words that you've given are the words that we needed. So, and the last question that we have is anonymous, and it says, what TV shows are you loving now?
I've been watching so many TV shows, and I've been catching up on ones that like I should have caught up on years ago. I was like actively watching and then just like let them slip.
Mhm.
I've been watching Outlander, which I had watched like 2 seasons, and I kept getting stuck at the part where they go to France, because I can't stand the story when they get there. I just can't stand it. But I finally powered through and I watched it all. Oh my God, suddenly I'm blanking on the TV shows. Parker, for watching, what TV shows have you been watching? I'm trying to think. Outlander, and we watch.
Bel
Yes, we've been
Air.
watching Bel Air. That's on Peacock. It's another streaming service. I know there's a million, but it is so good. It's I guess like a reboot or a retelling of the first series. The Resident, which is with if you watch Gilmore Girls, it's Logan from Gilmore Girls. He's like the main character. It's like a doctor show, but it's also personal, and there's a lot of commentary on like how screwed up our healthcare system is and stuff like that, and I really like it. I think that's all I can think of.
We have a few more. Someone actually, Halumi, I believe, says Claire and Frank or Claire and Jamie. Am I saying that
Let me look at it.
right?
Oh, Claire and Frank or Claire and Jamie. Well, it has to be Claire and Jamie because it's certainly not Claire and Frank.
This is a good question, actually, from Anonymous. Parker said, ooh, Frank. This one says, as your partner is also a poet, how do you manage living with another creative and working with another creative?
It's actually pretty cool because like anytime we're both writing books, we're bouncing ideas off of each other. We're like bouncing like book titles off of each other. And it's just like, I feel like it's a more enriching experience when you're living with someone who's also a creative, because especially when they're your spouse, it's like they know your brain, they know how you work. Like it's just really fun. That's all I can say.
Speaking of Parker, they also are an amazing poet, like you mentioned, and they have a feature in Cosmopolitan. Is that right?
Yeah,
Is
isn't
that the
that
right?
awesome?
Okay, that's crazy. I saw
I
that and I was
believe
like,
I believe it was Coffee Days, Whiskey Nights mentioned in the article, which is Parker's newest book. So if you haven't read it, you should.
yeah, definitely. Yeah, but that's all the questions that we have, unless there are any final. So get them in now if you have them.
So another TV show that I just remembered is called Pieces of Her. I think that's what it was called. It was number one on Netflix for a few days. So I was like, let me see, I'm bored. Like I'll put it on. And it was, I think it's like an 8 episode series. It's one of those like mini series. It was amazing. It was I think based on a book. And it was totally not what I was expecting. And there were like towards the end so many plot twists that like I had to keep binging the episodes, even though I didn't necessarily have the time to. If you haven't watched that, you should. It was really, really good.
Yeah, I was thinking about it. I need something to watch before Bridgerton comes out Friday. So I've definitely got to watch that.
Oh, well, thank you both so much for such a fantastic conversation. I didn't mean to pop on and interrupt the last question, but I
You're
figured.
good.
Well, thank you to our audience for joining us tonight. If you have yet to purchase Unlock Your Storybook Heart, I've dropped a link in the chat. It also will be emailed to you tomorrow as well. Thank you, Summer, for moderating such a fantastic conversation. And thank you, Amanda, for once again being at the Strand. We really appreciate you. And on that note, thank you, everyone, and I hope you have a wonderful evening.
Thank
Thanks.
you.
Bye.